Hello everyone. Today we are diving into one of the most confusing topics in PostgreSQL for Oracle or other RDBMS professionals, user and schema management in PostgreSQL. My goal is to simplify this concept for you along with a demonstration, so let's get started. To explain this, let's start with an analogy. Imagine that you are working for two applications. You have a table for application 1 and you need a container to store the table. In PostgreSQL, that container you call it as a schema. Schemas are logical grouping of database objects like tables, views, and functions. Think of them as a folder inside a database. Now for application 2, you might have another table. To keep this separate from the first application, you can create a different schema and put the table inside the second schema. So the schema 1 contains the tables for application 1 and schema 2 contains the tables for application 2. This way, schemas allow you to organize and segregate data for different applications. Now, when you logically group these schemas together, you call it as a database. And finally, to manage all of these, you need a user. A user in PostgreSQL can control the schemas, tables, and even the database as a whole. However, in Postgres, the user is isolated from the database and resides within the broader PostgreSQL cluster. Just to summarize, a database in a PostgreSQL acts as a main container and the schemas are like subfolders within it. You can have multiple schemas inside a database and each schema can contain its own tables, views, and more. You can have any number of users in the cluster and any number of databases. When I say any number, there is a certain limit. You can go through the documentation for the number of databases that you can have in the cluster. And each database can contain any number of schemas. Users' activity in PostgreSQL are determined by the privileges assigned to them. Let's move to a demo to see all this in action. Let me check if I have any PostgreSQL running. I don't have any Postgres running. I'll initialize a new cluster. I'll start my cluster. I use the command psql to connect to my database. If you don't give any arguments, you'll connect to the Postgres database by default. Let me check if I have any users. I have one user. Let me check how many databases I have. I have 3 databases: Postgres, template 0 and template 1. Since I have connected to Postgres database, I have one schema inside Postgres database. Now what we are going to do? We are going to create few databases and few schemas within those databases. We'll also create few custom users. First, I'll create the schemas in Postgres database. In precise, I'll create 5 schemas. Then I'll create a couple of databases. Let me put db1 as the database name and I'll put db2 as another database, and each of these databases contains 5 schemas within it. I'm going to create few users as well. I'll create the users with a prefix as test. Now I have 2 custom databases created and each database has 5 schemas within it and few users created. Let me log in and again and check how many databases I have. I have 1, 2 and then the default 3 databases. I'll connect to db1. Let me check how many schemas I have. I have 5 schemas. I'll connect it to DB2, and I have 5 schemas in DB2 as well. These schemas within the databases are separated from the schemas outside the database. And you have users that control all the schemas or databases based on the privileges that are assigned. By default, these users will not be having any privilege except connect privilege to that database. Now I have connected to the database as the custom user. I'll try to create a table. It will not allow because of the lack of privileges. Understanding the privileges is not part of this video. We'll understand the privileges part later. Let me also try to create few more schemas. I'll try to give, let's say, 500 here. It is creating, and I'll put 1500. It is creating. So the number of schemas that you can have in your database is unlimited. When I say unlimited, there is a limit, but yeah, understanding what is the limit is beyond the scope of this demonstration. At the same time, you can also have any number of users. Again, understanding how many users that you can have inside your cluster is beyond the scope of this demonstration. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. Each Postgres cluster includes one default user, that is Postgres, and 3 databases, that are Postgres, template 0 and template 1. Postgres is the super user with full control over the entire cluster. Databases and users are independent of each other. You can create a custom database, and each custom database can have only one owner. Each database gets a public schema, and one can create any number of custom schemas. You can also have any number of custom users in the cluster. That's it for today's video. I hope this helps simplify user administration in PostgreSQL for you. Let me know if you want to understand any other PostgreSQL related topics in detail. Thank you.